Excellent. Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to today's panel discussion on a very timely and transformative topic, I would say, driving a new wave of patient and HCP care with generative AI. I'm Chetak Buaria, and it's my privilege to moderate today's panel discussion. As an introduction, I head commercial operations for Merck's oncology business based in Darmstadt, Germany. Of course, whatever I say here represents my personal thoughts and opinions and not necessarily my employer's. Today, we are joined by a very large audience from diverse backgrounds and geographies, reflecting the broad interest and critical importance of this subject matter in the life science sector. The landscape of customer care in pharmaceuticals has long been characterized by a patchwork of solutions, different call centers for different campaigns, patient support programs, each with its own processes and data management systems. This approach has been more reactive than proactive quite often, leading to a fragmented and inefficient support structure. Now, as the industry evolves towards more patient-centric medicines, such as cell and gene therapies, personalized medicines, the need for a new, more integrated approach to customer care becomes not just beneficial, but essential. In addition to such a service-oriented approach, could also help the industry address the issue of shrinking customer access. Our discussion today focuses on how we can transform the very foundation of customer care in biopharma and how can generative AI enable us better than ever before. The capabilities of generative AI combined with robust data strategy offer unprecedented opportunities for efficiency and personalization and responsiveness. This shift from transactional ad hoc customer care model to one that is deliberate, holistic represents a paradigm shift, a revolution in how biopharma companies engage with their customers. Today, we will hear from my industry peers who are at the forefront of integrating these advanced approaches into their operations. They will share their insights and experiences on enhancing customer experiences through data-driven personalization, streamlining operations, and preparing for future trends in AI-driven services, but not to forget some of the challenges that they might have encountered or they foresee, and some of the real-life learnings that would be priceless. But before we go into the topic, I would like to understand you as an audience, and to do that, I have a couple of questions for you, which will help us to tailor the conversation a bit. For that, I encourage each one of you to respond to the polling questions coming on the screen. So the first one is to get your background and your single choice to make based on where you come from. Let's give ourselves a minute to respond. So I see 126 participants. So hopefully we will have 100 plus responses to this question. Okay, so then hope I can't see the results, but we can also check in with the second question that I have for you. If Daisy could, if you could bring that up, yeah, thank you. So how would you rate the maturity of service orientation within your organization in terms of delivering patient and HCP care? So here is the range based on where you are and what you have seen around you. It will be helpful if you respond to this question with a single choice. Okay, so thank you very much for those of you who responded. Appreciate you sharing your insights. So I see that overall, maximum score comes to moderately mature. We have integrated initiatives, but there is room for improvement. Scores the highest, and rest giving us a good spread, I would say, to also debate about the ranges here. With that context set, I would like to invite our panelists to the stage as we delve deeper into these critical topics and explore the future of customer care in biopharma industry. So please welcome to join me in welcoming my panelists here. And maybe I start, Sarah, with you, as I see you on my screen here. If you could share your introduction and any kind of short thoughts that you might have about the topic.
Sure, Shetek, thank you very much for the introduction. It's really nice to see everyone in the audience today. My name is Sarah Kleinpeter. I'm currently the Global Vice President, Head of Alzheimer's Disease for Novo Nordisk. I've been in the industry for all of my life, and I grew up in research and development before I came over to the commercial infrastructure. I've spent the last number of years as Managing Director across the UK, Ireland, and Finland. I've had the privilege during my career to visit each part of the value chain from first time in human the whole way to commercialization, and have launched over 16 products. It's very near and dear to my heart that we focus on customer services, but also that we bring the customer viewpoint and insights to everything we do in the industry. To do that, I think we have room for improvement, but we've learned a lot over the last decades that can help us lead the way for the future. So thank you very much. And I look forward to speaking with you today.
Thank you, Sarah. And maybe my next stop is with Rashid.
Thank you, Shetek. So I'm Rashid Izar, and I work for Biogen. I lead the global portfolio commercialization. I've been around since now 25 years in different roles and capacities and different geographies and multiple, I would say, continents. The way I would qualify the Biogen HCP and patient service orientation, I would say, is fairly mature at this stage. The reason being, or actually, I would say we're kind of forced here because we are quite niched in specialty and rare disease. And by definition, I worked in primary care before. You could probably afford in primary care not to be that service oriented. But actually, in rare disease, there is now different options. There is no alternative. That's why I think we are fairly mature, but there is room for improvement, obviously.
Thank you, Rashid. And then I go to Vyom Bhuta.
Yeah, so I head up Cognizant's commercial life sciences practice globally. In the past, and even now within Cognizant, had the pleasure of helping companies launch products in multiple therapeutic areas. Specifically at Cognizant, from a commercial standpoint, it's our privilege every day to wake up and help clients launch life-saving therapies and bring them to market, leveraging empathy, data science, and digital. So great to be here and look forward to the conversation.
Thank you, Vyom. Okay, so let's kick off the conversation. And my mind goes to the point, maybe towards Sarah first, and also with Rashid later. But Sarah, if as franchise and brand lead, what does service orchestration and customer service mean to you, and how does it fit into the overall commercialization strategy?
Yeah, thank you for the question. And just to iterate, the views that I'll express today are from my professional experience and aren't necessarily the views of Novo Nordisk. But I think it's a very interesting question because the two things that pop to mind when you ask me this question is synchronization of insights and being customer obsessed. But let me articulate what I mean by that. So I've worked in a range of therapy areas, including rare disease and oncology, also vaccines and primary care, and several others. And it's become very clear to me over this time period that actually the power of being able to create a global strategy or produce a global brand is being able to synchronize insights across the value chain. And when we think about customers take on different shapes and sizes, no matter what therapy area you are in or what brand that you're focused on or medicine. And I think it's important for us to step back and really understand from the start of this journey to the end of it, how many different types of customers are we going to interact with, and how can we work together as a cross-functional industry and with partners to be able to anticipate the needs of those customers now, but also in the future, and deliver holistic solutions, which I think today you'll hear in the term of services. But it does bring me, I had a great experience at Amazon when I was at GlaxoSmithKline, and they teach something called customer obsession. And so I'll coin them for that in this podcast, because if you are close to your customer and you understand it, and the team of people around you understand it, you will ultimately deliver a very great product and service in the end.
Makes sense, Sarah. Thanks. Maybe Rashid, anything for you to add or complement or differ from Sarah's viewpoint?
Well, so I think just to reiterate the word that customer obsessed. So though I'm always puzzled, and that's my personal views, I always was puzzled that calling patient customer. So I don't know what's the alternative there, but I'm reluctant always to do so. In my perspective is that we do, as pharma, or biopharma, we provide therapies. Let's put it this way: there is a promise out there, and our job is to make sure that we fulfill that promise. And services today is at the forefront for what we do. It makes huge difference for HCPs, makes huge difference for patients. It makes huge difference as well how you can sometimes differentiate yourself from possible competition. So. We do so in many rare diseases that we operate in, and I'm happy to elaborate further later.
Okay, thank you. Maybe Rashid, let me continue with you in that case. And my question to you is, how would you rate us as an industry in delivering world-class customer service to HCPs and patients, and what challenges do we face as an industry and barriers within our organization? So if you take Amazon as kind of best in class, if I gather that much from the conversation so far, where do we stand, and what are some of the barriers and challenges that we see?
Yeah, so again, my views here. So I don't think we are the best. Hopefully we would agree. So at least in my opinion, I mean, we're all customers of Amazon, and we see the bar out there is pretty high. Some of it has to do with the cultural shift that we need to operate. We are pretty, I would say, quite a lazy industry here. So we don't like change. And change actually doesn't occur like in technology, where if Amazon not paying attention for probably a day, they would pay a heavy price for that. Our industry is much more stable, and I believe that's the reason why you don't see major transformations happening in our industry more frequently. So that's the reason I think we're not the best. Are we making progress? Absolutely. Are we leveraging technology? Absolutely. And we're here to share more experiences across different companies we operate in.
Thank you, Rashid. And Vyom,
I will add
sure.
thing. So I will add one thing. The reason as well why we are in a heavy regulated industry. So it's not that easy here. We have duty, we have regulations, we have data privacy regulations that we need to make sure that we adhere to, and we do so. And that actually as well, I would say, at least it is a barrier towards embracing innovation and technology in our industry.
Makes sense, Rashid. Vyom, let me come to you. You have this unique vantage point working with diverse set of clients. How do you see, how do you rate the industry from delivering customers service orientation as a criteria, and what are the challenges and barriers typically the clients cite to you?
Yeah, I read an article last year that was quite thought-provoking, which is it ranked different industries in terms of consumer trust. So consumers, HCP, and so forth. We as an industry, we're ranked second lowest. So even oil and gas was and tobacco was ahead of pharma, right? So that says a lot on sort of where we should be rating ourselves and the work that we have ahead of us. But one of the things that we started to do over the last 18 months is actually work with several forward-looking pharma companies, and we actually listen through HCP and patients calling in. So listen through a bunch of calls across multiple call centers. So across multiple clients, across multiple types of call centers within those clients, and several themes emerge in terms of the challenges for us as an industry. Number one, within the company, there are organizational silos. So there is no common customer service function. We have a sales and marketing, but customer service is spread out. So how do you govern customer service across the organization? That remains unanswered for us as an industry. Second, because of this functional silos, there's fragmented operations, right? Like, so multiple call centers, some are insourced, some are outsourced, so different operators that are optimizing moments, but not the entire experience for the customer. The third is because of fragmented operations, there's outdated tech, right? So across all these call centers, the technology and the data availability across of the customer is outdated. So, there's room for us to modernize tech, and we'll get into the Gen AI talk. I said it. That's the first time I think any one of us said Gen AI. And then the fourth is because of all this, we do spend surveys and things like that in measuring customer CSAT scores. But the question is, how reliable are they? If they're really fragmented, optimizing just moments, not the entire journey, are we truly measuring true customer satisfaction? So those four areas are sort of challenges for us as an industry to overcome.
Mm-hmm. Makes sense, Vyom. And let me continue with you because you mentioned about the tech and how that could be an enabling factor. But let's take it a bit broadly. How do we overcome some of these challenges that you have mentioned? What is the recipe for success? Because from an intent perspective, everyone wants to be customer centric. I don't think any organization would deny that. But the question is how to build that journey and what is the role that technology plays in that, including now to talk about AI, Gen AI. And is it a question of investment and what from where to start if investment needs to be made? What investments would make sense to elevate customer experience across the value chain?
Yeah, great question. So I think a perspective to have is, people say start with the strategy, then the operations, then the tech. We believe you got to flip it because technology can really be the unifier. You can bring technology to the forefront to drive your strategy. And it's really, if you look at the investments we've made over several years now, is all in omni-channel on the commercial side. But all of those have been in push channels. Like we had the field force, now we're sending email marketing campaigns. So it's all, it's all still push. And those are really highly where we are trying to send a message to the customer, right? But when the customers are calling in, they have a real need. And so all of our efforts, the investments we've made in sort of push messaging, we really have to now, really it's the next evolution of omni-channel where customer service becomes truly important because that's when the customers are calling in and we can address their need at the moment of across their journey. And in terms of tech, there's a lot of transformation that can be done, but I'll bucket it in sort of three areas. One is investing in self-service, customer self-service. So almost giving a digital front door into our organization, but digitally, where customers can come in and help address their own questions and and answers. So portals, apps, and then an interface like a chat GPT or a chatbot interface can enable that digital self-service component, and investments in technology there. Second is, when the calls or emails do come in from customers, how well are we empowering our agents, customer service reps across these call centers, whether it be patient services or even outbound hybrid reps and things like that, in terms of having an agent co-pilot and a centralized workstation. So really assisting and guiding agents to be able to, in real time, address the questions that the customers have. So investments in that area in terms of technology. And the third, I would say, is integrated CRM and a knowledge management and reporting layer to enable that. So those three, underpinning all of this is really where the power of Gen AI can accelerate all three areas, where you can actually enable a RAG model, an LLM that really hosts the knowledge base of our internal enterprise to aid not only customers to do self-service, agents to do their job in terms of co-pilot capability through tech, and then integrated CRM. So really, the Gen AI RAG model, you can get assets across the organization and make the enterprise intelligent about customers, the products, and even our policies.
Okay, excellent, Vyom. And let me stop by with Sarah. And I think Rashid was the one who mentioned earlier about we being regulated industry, right? That's one of the challenge, I would say. And Sarah, the question coming to my mind is, from your experience, how you have seen some use cases where companies have managed to successfully navigate some of the functional silos or obligations that we might have from a regulatory and compliance perspective. Any thoughts that you would like to weigh in?
Yeah, and I think this is a really good context to the industry we work in. It's regulated, and we have a high commitment to the patients that we serve and the customers that we want to support, ultimately allowing them to treat the patients with appropriate medicines. And I think when I look back over my career, the organizations that have been able to kind of integrate the information and insights into good strategic decision making, but then also into strategic execution, which we could call operations here, have done a couple of things that have separated them from others. One, they've invested in organizational structure that withstands the compliance, but also navigates a way of working and cultural behaviors amongst teams that allows information to flow freely and then be applied in a compliant manner in how they execute on those insights. I also see in organizations where they've been really clear about who has the decision-making and accountability for key pieces of work streams are really setting themselves apart from their peers. And specifically, of course, we've talked about how structure and regulation does separate some of the pieces of work we do within the pharmaceutical industry. So that probably will remain in the future. But then what it comes down to are the people who are partners or strategic partners on those connection points need to be highly communicative between each other, high degrees of trust, and being able to work together seamlessly, but also in a compliant manner. And the fourth thing that I've seen that has also really stood companies apart from others is the investment in new and future capabilities, and specifically strategic marketing capabilities. And it's interesting, I heard omni-channel earlier, but I have this personal belief that, 10 years ago, we were calling multi-channel, then we were calling it omni-channel, and everybody was trying to figure out what the definition of that was and defined it differently. And now, because that hasn't really been able to embed and it's really hard to execute on, that philosophy is now becoming AI and machine learning. And what that means is we need to get really good at exercising on the data that we have to be able to respond to the customer in the channel that's right for them. You can call it whatever you want, but that is essentially the recipe for success in the future. So I think there are spots in the industry where we can look to be inspired.
Makes sense, Sarah. Yeah, it's a good time to check in with the audience. So let's see how much of what we have been talking about challenges resonate with the audience through this question number 3 that you see on your screen. What do you see as the biggest barrier to adopting a more customer-centric approach in your organization? Let's give the audience a minute to respond, and then we see how much it resonates. Okay, so let's see what is the result looking like. Interesting spread between lack of clear strategy, organizational culture, regulatory concerns. No surprise there. Technology doesn't seem to be the biggest problem, thankfully, and then no wonder there is a bit of budget constraints also getting highlighted. Any reflection on the audience response to the above question? What do you think has stopped pharma from embracing customer centricity sooner? Any thoughts? Maybe I go around virtual table here. Any first reactions? Any surprises there? Starting with Rashid, if you want to share anything.
I can go. So I am not surprised. I think this is consistent, at least what I had in mind personally. So technology is not an issue, budget it is not an issue because we can always make room for that. The issue around the strategy is that when you are not clear on the problem you are trying to solve for, that's a recipe for your, the first issue, that you gotta be obsessed in terms of understanding that patient journey in industry where we are and the challenges along the way and what is the specific issue that you are trying to solve. And in our view, you flip the model, and I'm very curious to hear more from your perspective. Obviously here still in a very traditional way. I want to understand really what's the problem we're trying to solve for, and how we're going to go about that. And then once you make a decision, then we stay consistent and give that solution a chance to operate and impact patient in the best possible way.
Mm-hmm. Makes sense. Sarah, anything to add from your side?
Yeah, it was 2 words come to mind: habit and strengths. And I'll explain what that means. I think that the industry has developed a set of habits that are sometimes hard to break. And as a result, I think of the best intent of most of the industry wanting to go to customer centricity is the fact that some of those antiquated processes and so forth are kind of sticking around. It's hard to challenge that way of working. And the second part that I mentioned outside of habit is strengths. I do a lot of business development work, so I have the pleasure of meeting a lot of different companies. And what I see is all of our companies were born on different strengths, but over time, the industry has tried to get good at some of the same types of things. And I'm curious, and I wonder if the companies defaulted back to their positions of strength, which created that growth, whether they'd actually be able to ignite past this behavior change and get back to their roots and the strengths of which they were founded.
Yeah, makes sense. Vyom, what do you have in mind? Anything to add or reflect on responses that we got from the audience around challenges? Technology is clearly not the biggest challenge, but could be an opportunity, it feels.
Yeah, no, I think I would say clearly one of the questions that get asked when we work with clients is like, whose responsibility is it within the organization to drive this? Is it commercial? Is it medical? Because if you look at this area, it's not just actually commercial, right? Like HCPs and patients, consumers, distributors, all, those are all like our customers who are actually calling in. So one of the, it was not surprising. I think organizational structure was one of the higher ones, and that that's to the heart to be able to answer that question. Like, and if you look at how do you govern, how do you budget for programs, investments, how do you measure customer satisfaction overall across the journey, what investments you make, so all of those, if it can be done in a coordinated way. And I don't know, I guess a question to Sarah and Rachid, and even to the audience, like, is it time for pharma to have a customer service function that actually reports into the leadership, just like the sales and the marketing function report and the medical function reports into executive leadership? And look at Amazon. They obsess around customer service, right? So it's important and hard to the core of what they do. And the question is, should it be the same for pharma and life science companies?
What a fascinating question. So I was thinking about, my experience in the industry with various different size structures and ways of just working. And the one thing that comes very red thread through all of those examples in my mind is the fact that we're organized by subject matter expertise. And this is actually probably one of the things that holds us back from reaching our potential. And so Amazon also has this theory of a one pizza team, but essentially the concept is you put a service team together that represents the core of what you're trying to achieve. And I don't think there's any one answer, but for pharma, I think the answer lies in the clinical and patient journey. And if a brand or a therapy area organizes themselves around that patient and care journey, they will essentially create a service team. And if that service team works really well together and compliantly, they will essentially deliver on what we've been talking about. It's a very different way of thinking. It's like sprints and a little bit of Six Sigma in there if people are familiar with business improvement. But it's a completely adaptive and agile way of working, and it will take some shift to get there.
Indeed. And maybe, Rashid, in addition to this functional accountability, if you could also blend in, because we work for global organizations, so there is also this debate around what is the role of global versus country, above country versus country. If you could also bring that dimension, that might be interesting as well.
Thank you, Shatek. And I was unsurprisingly probably, but I was going there.
Okay,
because
excellent.
The reality is that there is no global patient or global HCP, and that's all happening. And we deal with that at some point, but then we transition to the countries, and Sarah was managing directly in the country. I was managing directly in the country. The question is, if the budget is not constrained, which is true, is who is paying? So, and I've seen different models. So I've seen model where what you suggested, Vyom. So you put the money somewhere centrally. You can have it report to the CEO, whatever. But the money is centrally, and then you develop those solutions. I've seen the side effect of that model. You end up having at some point some solution that Sarah or Rashid of Germany or of Denmark doesn't want. Because they don't solve my problem in Germany, my problem in France, etc. So that's one thing. So and that's why we shifted the model, at least as Biogen recently, really moving the money and accountability as closer to the customer as possible. And then if that's the solution, we can drive the strategy globally we want to do, but then it has to be customized locally, it has to be decided locally, and the money sit locally. And what we see today, really, there is the regional heads and the country GMs are embracing those solutions and making them theirs. So it's a very pragmatic answer, but that's the reality how it's working. I'm very worried now when I see money sitting in a headquarters.
Very well said, Rashid. Thank you so much.
I'd like to make one more point.
Sure.
The commercialization or bringing products in cell and gene therapy to market is forcing organizations to think differently. So the model of cell and gene therapy inherently, to support the patient and the HCP, you have to have the clinical, the manufacturing, and the commercial organizations work very tightly together, right? So the service orchestration with the traditional pharma and traditional medicine versus cell and gene therapy is very different. And if you look at actually some of those models and study those models of companies who brought those products to market, and we know that they're increasingly going to be more investments in the R&D pipeline within the industry, and this model is going to be hopefully is going to take growth around the service orchestration because the medicine and the model for therapy is going to change. So I just want to say that that's another way for organizations to just think through on, okay, how are these companies bring these products to market, and what does this service orchestration mean?
Absolutely.
To actually look at cell and gene therapy products and companies.
Indeed, makes good sense to me. Thanks, Vyom. So let me check the questions that are coming here from the audience. So I want to pick one which is also close to my heart, and I kind of take the liberty of rephrasing it a little bit. So the question goes along the lines of, does biopharma view patients as customer? And I would like to broaden it further to say that who is ultimately the customer for pharmaceutical industry? Is it patients, HCP, payers who pay for service? Do they pay for service? Do they value service differently on top of the drug? And how you drive service orientation when you have such a fragmented customer landscape to navigate? Any thoughts from any one of you?
So I actually think this goes back to a theme I raised previously about the clinical and patient journey, because actually when you think about customer obsession or who is the product for, it's for actually multiple people in the pharmaceutical industry, and you're serving different people for different needs, and those needs need to be understood and they need to be anticipated. And I think this is where, when I was talking before about synchronization of insights, it's actually being able to take that entire journey and different customers and syncing those insights in a way that create an actionable and very focused strategy. I think where the industry falls short sometimes is we over complexify, if that could be a word, all of that. And actually, if we did 2 or 3 things really well for that journey and met the needs of the people that we're going to meet as we go from supplying the product to the patient's experience, to the healthcare professional's information to make a decision, to the payer's ability to navigate the healthcare cost and also reimbursement, we would get a lot further. And I do believe that the more that we work together, we accomplish more. We probably haven't gotten onto that topic yet, but I really do believe that industry, government, and academics or innovation, when coming together, can really make some great societal impact.
Excellent point, Sarah. I'm checking with either Rashid or Vyom if you would like to add anything, or I have a very interesting also next question lined up here.
I would just repeat my personal views. I'm puzzled with linking patient to customers, because in my mind it implies transaction. There is something in return, which is not the case here. The example for us, for instance, in rare disease and SMA disease, for the administration for Spinraza is intrathecal. For kids, it's a life-saving medication, but it's intrathecal. So who want to go through the intrathecal, right? Nobody. And less so for a child. When we thought about the issue, when we thought about the solution, which is a form of a 3D virtual reality camera that the kids actually can have during the app procedures, that will improve their experience. So it changes their experience. It changes their life in that moment. I can't think, we don't want anything in return. We want that child to have a better experience as they go through that therapy, which is life-saving, but it's not easy to have. So that's why, to me, is the promise, is the purpose, is the duty that we have of care. But it's not necessarily, I wouldn't qualify it as a customer. But this, again, I think even in Biogen company, we use customer, but I always say to people, personally speaking, I'm puzzled by the word.
Good point, Rashid. Let me pick the next one, which allows us also to continue the discussion a bit further. And the question goes like this: how can we work with the field force to embark on and buy-in when it comes to the omni-channel and especially digital strategy? So we talk about different the kind of channels and functions. There's a field force, and then there are a lot of these services rendered through digital means. What role do we see field force playing in? What are the best practices to make sure that there's a buy-in from a field force perspective? Any lessons or good practices that you would have observed? Anyone would like to comment on that?
Maybe I can pick up from there. So when I think about field force, I think about all the roles that the industry has interacting with customers. And in my experience of deploying omni-channel go-to-market models and so forth, what I've found is that face-to-face interactions with the people that we serve in the industry doesn't go away. What the omni-channel, multi-channel, or in the future might be called something different in terms of data, it's our ability as an industry to serve the customers in the way that they want to receive the information. And so what this means for the field force is there might be some complementary activity going on, but that also enables and amplifies their efforts as they have that face-to-face interaction. So when done really well, it's essentially a flagging system that helps the field force go to the right customers, or actually find people or customers they haven't explored before because they didn't realize there was an interest. And so when we use the data in a very strategic way, and we integrate ways of working and recognize positive behavior, our industry can make it pretty far.
Mm-hmm. Well said. Let's move on. I have the next question coming to my mind is around being reactive. So quite often we see that industry has been reactive in setting up services, either because of competitive reasons or because of regulatory reasons. So how do we shift the paradigm from reactive to proactive and predictive customer care? And what are the use cases that you have seen getting implemented? Rashid, I remember in the beginning you talked about use cases that you have seen working well. Maybe you want to pick this up.
Yeah. Well, yeah. So I think I don't know, Sarah. Please feel free to jump in. But we are moving away from really thinking of the problem or the opportunity as reactive, proactive, and or predictive. Is that what's the issue at hand here we're trying to solve for? So let's say a concrete example here. So rare disease, and when you are in Friedreich ataxia or ELS, so one, there are 300 patients in the US, out of 340 million people actually as a US population. How do you find them? So, and this is where technology comes to play with our US team now, with computing all the data from medical record to hospital data to historical data to clinical trial actually data. How do you compute all this information in a way that support those physicians and help them identify those patients? 300 out of 300 million or 40 million patients. So that is what we're busy with today as a concrete example here. The second one I will give, and I think this is dear to our heart, Sarah, for an Alzheimer patient. So we start to see hope with new therapies coming to fight the disease. One of them is the A-beta class. So great hope, but they have side effects. ARIA, she's sort of sweating, etc. So we're working with AI here in developing solution that will help physicians to predict ARIA occurrence, the risk of ARIA. So back again, what's the issue we're trying to solve for? Be obsessed about, go and do it and solve it. But we don't think of the situation as, are we going to go predictive? Or are we going to go reactive? Or are we going to go proactive? There's issue, solution, or how technology can get you there.
Mm-hmm. Good point. Sarah, anything that you would like to add or build on what Rashid just said? In terms of any additional use cases that you might have seen?
Yeah, use cases are tough in the industry itself. I was thinking about like where have I seen the service at its best, and actually, it's been in my hometown community in healthcare. So there's a medical university of South Carolina where I'm currently living, and what's really interesting is they have this full service call center and app, and you might say, okay, pretty basic. But actually, I don't have to do anything. They call me, they tell me when I need to, go to the doctor with my family. If I have a question, I call them, and with like 5 minutes, there's an answer of whatever the question is. And I haven't experienced that in quite some time. And so what we're talking about isn't complex. It's, I think what Richard's saying is, what is the issue we're trying to solve, and just do that. And when you do that, you really don't have to push anyone to do anything. You're actually meeting them where they are and providing a service or a solution to better their lives. So I think that's what I would add to this particular topic.
Good point, Sarah. Thank you. So let's
I'll just add one more like practical use cases, leveraging data and so forth, and also the question around reps and so forth. The role of a rep is changing, but also the model of customer engagement is changing, right? Like, so you have hybrid reps now, right? Field force versus inside sales reps. In addition, there's a great opportunity to manage this call center or customer service center into both, a service center, but also the ability to detail a product. So you can turn a call that comes in as a service call into a potential detail as well, right? Like, so you can go both ways. And one good examples, and I think Rachid was just mentioning around using data to actually help the HCPs. So we've done some work around use cases where, and again, it depends on the availability of data within different markets. But in the US, if you look at lab data can really show a lot of information about the patient flow that an HCP's clinic is witnessing, right? So if you have analytics, again, this is where data science comes in, that can say, oh, there's an increase of patient flow for a particular doctor or for a particular clinic, and the types of patients, you can segment the types of patients based on their history and EMR records and things like that, having a longitudinal page. You can then create a proactive outreach on how can HCPs manage the various different patient profiles a little bit better. What does it mean in terms of getting access to therapy, so benefit verification and things like that? There's a huge demand that's going to be there on the clinic. So how can you have your patient services be a little bit more proactive in sort of addressing the needs of that customer? So those are just like two examples that I want to give where you can use data and analytics to drive more proactive care. And it really isn't sort of a sales or marketing and so forth. It really is the mindset of care that you can bring for the HCP and for the patients, leveraging data. So those are just two examples.
No, very good point. And while I have the virtual mic with you, Vyom, let me pick your brain on the next question coming to my mind. Is around the investment, right? I mean, service comes as a cost on top of drug that we bring to the market. And the question is, how do you build a business case for integrated customer care? And what are the metrics to measure service orientation within a company? So any thoughts or good practices that you have seen working across the industry?
Yeah, to simplify, there are a lot of metrics, but in terms of a business case, it's around customer experience. And if we truly believe that customer experience can drive business performance, which I think we all agree that it does, customer service component is really, or customer experience measurement is really important. So I'll come to how do you measure customer experience in a second. The second is the cost to serve. If you look at cost to serve, just in the US, we're working with some of the customers, we've been able to show that leveraging technology, leveraging data, unifying operations, and looking at organizational silos, we've been able to show savings on cost to serve of customer service by about 50 to 60%. 50 to 60%. And the spend in most big pharma, I would say just in the US, could be easily around 100 million. Okay, so that's a significant amount of savings and lowering cost to serve. Coming back to sort of the customer experience and measurement, we mentioned trust, being able to measure trust, and I think CSAT and NPS scores are really important. But really asking yourself, not measuring CSAT at just moments, but the entire experience. The second is quality of life. So things like, are we accelerating faster access to therapy because of the service orientation? Are we bringing the therapy that has been prescribed for the right eligible patients faster? You can convert that into not only a customer experience metric, but there's a business performance metrics there as well. Time to first fill, right? Adherence to therapy, continuity of care, are all those measures. Another big one is we're advising clients to really measure customer effort score. Sarah mentioned, how do we make it easy for customers to work with us, right? So number of interaction points, number of clicks, number of channels, but how much effort, how many calls did they make? How many times did they get transferred? Did we answer the first time they contacted with us, either through that digital self-service or reaching an agent? So the customer effort score is super important in this area. And then obviously, call center performance metrics are important. First contact resolution, average handling time, and so forth continue to be there. But this quality of life and the customer effort score and the trust factor are the three main dimensions that can drive our business forward.
Let me connect with one question that I see here on my panel screen here. It goes along the lines of leveraging Gen AI for real world data. So the way I'm looking at it, for me, getting real world evidence and real world data is kind of one of the byproduct, if I can call that, of customer service orientation, right? I mean, you engage deeply with your customer. In return, you get some real world validation and experience around the product. Have any one of you seen any Gen AI, specifically Gen AI use cases and leveraging real world data for pharma company? And that's the question here from the audience. I have a view. I mean, at least from what I have seen, it's too early to say that this is the real world evidence which came exclusively from Gen AI. However, what increasingly we are seeing is that Gen AI becoming the default way of generating insights. It has this unique ability to churn tons of data, which is a classical real world data set. But then if you wanted to do that manually, it would have taken it longer, and sometimes you miss those insights. But clearly, I think the value that I see is more around underlying processes that drives real world data and converting that into the insights. So that's my thought. I see Sarah nodding in agreement.
Yeah, I've worked on several proprietary projects, which I won't mention, but what I do see as a crossroads is the fact that we, as a regulated industry, we've got GDPR, we've got our compliance, but we also need to help patients who are sometimes hard to find. And it is at those crossroads where we'll be able to identify future solutions. And I think with the healthcare systems around the world navigating towards electronic health records, that is going to increase, but also the sensitivity of the use of the data will continue to increase. So I think there's a lot for us to learn as the science gets better and the data becomes more rich and in several different places in the world. But I do believe that it will make some of our processes as an industry more efficient and hopefully get to the patients who need our medicines the most.
Excellent. Thank you, Sarah. I'm conscious of time. It has been a fascinating conversation. And as we always say, when you have good people around the table, time flies. And this has been no different. But as we kind of wind up the discussion in next 5 minutes or so, I'm wondering if you would like to have any action points that the audience can take to drive the change from now. So if there are one or two bullet points, a recipe or stepping stones that you would share with the audience who might be just embarking on this journey, maybe I go around the table and continuing with Sarah, with you to start with.
Yeah, I think two very actionable points you could do right after this call is to think about, no matter where you're working, what do you not know about your customer that you wish you knew? And what do you know that if you shared with a colleague would change something? Mm-hmm. And I'd be interested in where you would take that.
Very good point, Sarah. Know your customer first. Rachid, what are your action points?
I would say, I think something that I've said multiple times today is really, what is it that, fundamental thing, in my opinion, what is it you're trying to solve for here? What's the issue at hand? And once you have, and then obviously how you do that, you talk to your internally, externally, you get the maximum information insight you need. And then once you are clear on the issue at hand, then you start working on a solution. Don't ever take a no for an answer, because the number of solutions, whether digital, whether AI now more and more, where we heard the first thing, no, we can't do this, we can't do that. And then once you engage your colleague actually at the early phase of your thinking, there are ways, there are solutions that are appropriate, that are adherent to the law, to the regulation, to compliance. And that would be my advice. Focus on the issue you want to solve and involve your colleagues as early as possible in the process.
Makes sense, Rachid. Vyom, what are your action points?
Yeah, I would just encourage us as an industry to think customer first and continue that. And really, when you think of customer first, just understanding, are we there, and do we make it easy as an industry to cater to their needs when they need us? Mm-hmm. Like, so that's a question to be answered. And I think in answering those questions, a lot of what we talked today sort of reveals itself. So we look forward to working with you and innovating and taking our industry forward.
Thank you, Vyom. And I can only echo with all that you guys have said, and to build on what Rachid said, for me, what is critical is to have this cross-functionally aligned, integrated strategy for customer experience with a very clear accountability and visibility in terms of who does what. I think that should be a good starting point as well. With that said, I thank each one of you, Sarah, Vyom, Rachid, for spending time. I enjoyed the conversation. I learned a lot, and I hope the audience as well. And I thank you for your time and sharing the insights, and also thank the audience for joining us today. Appreciate you guys joining, and have a good rest of the day. Thank you so much.
Thank you all.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.